myself and Amy, Andres, Carolyn, Crystal, John, Maureen,
And Sarah.
Sarah. So let's go ahead and get started.
Great.
So I'll call the meeting to order, and then we will have some explanations of the meeting, which you see on your screen here. And Michaela, you want to add anything to that?
I can just repeat it for those that may have just joined us. It looks like we had one person join us. This is a virtual meeting via WebEx. It's the Planning Commission, and it officially starts now. If you input the link into your web browser, you can join the meeting as an attendee. You will come in muted. You can also visit our website and go to the Planning Commission agenda and minutes to also find that link. We do also have instructions for joining a virtual meeting if this is the first time you've ever participated in this sort of meeting. And there's step-by-step instructions for the public. When you do come in as an attendee, you come in muted and planning staff will see you there. When an item comes before the Planning Commission and it's the public hearing portion of the meeting, if you would like to speak to that item, please raise your hand. There's a tiny little hand in the lower right-hand corner of your box, and we will see that you would like to speak to that item, and we'll go ahead and unmute you there. If you'd like to send in comments, we'd be happy to read those into the record, and you can do so by sending it to planning.comments@slcgov.com. If you need any other sort of help, we will be monitoring that email during this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rosie, I think you can share. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to go ahead and start the meeting with the approval of the minutes for August 12th, 2020. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll move we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Thank you, Maureen.
I'll second.
Is that John?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
thank you.
it's
Okay. So we have a motion from Maureen and a second from John to approve the minutes. Is there any discussion or corrections of the minutes? If not, I'll take a vote. Amy?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Abstain.
Andres?
I'll vote yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Crystal? Crystal? Thank you. John?
Yes.
Thank you. The minutes are approved, and we'll move on to the report.
I'm on as well, Madam Chair. Sorry, I couldn't find the meeting link.
Okay. Thank you. Matt Lyon says yes as well. All right. So we now have the members of the commission that we expected to be here. Okay. So now we are, I must also say that I am the vice chair. The chair of the commission is out of town this week and will not be presiding. So we'll move to the report of the chair and the vice chair. And since I am both today, I have to say I don't have a report. So I'll go on to the report of the director. Nick or Michaela?
I do not have anything to share. Nick?
Yeah, just real quick, just some updates on some of the items that the commission has seen over the past several months ago that are now under consideration by the city council. One of those, and probably the most significant, is, if you remember, there's a proposal to increase building heights in the GMU zone that went to the Planning Commission several months ago. The city council has had several briefings on it. They're going to be holding a public hearing soon, and it appears that they are more than likely going to vote to approve that proposal. The planning commission made a negative recommendation on it, primarily because it increased the height without any kind of design review process. And so as part of that discussion, the council is going to be asking us to revisit building heights in all of the downtown zones and surrounding areas. So that's going to be a fairly significant project. We don't know when we're going to be able to start that, but when we get it on your radar so that you guys are thinking and how they've looked at things. So that was primarily the main thing. They've didn't have a lot going on in July, and we only have a few meetings, but they've started to ramp up on zoning and other things that have come for the planning commission. So we'll have a lot more activity. I think we've had 7 or 8 briefings with them over the last 2 meetings. So most of those are the smaller zoning changes, but hopefully we'll start seeing some more of that. And that's it.
Thank you, Nick. Can you give us some kind of update on what the planning commission agenda looks like for the next month or so, or 2 months?
Yeah, so we have a lot of projects that are in various stages, and you may have noticed that there were some that were initially on this agenda and then pulled within the last few days. We still have a number of things happening. Some of them are errors that we've discovered with noticing, and so we pulled those to try to fix that noticing before you guys take action, and just making sure that we're dotting I's and crossing T's, which one of the things that we're finding being 100% remote is that we aren't catching these errors earlier like we normally would. And so we're trying to find ways to fix that. Some of them are technical in nature that we don't know why they happened. For example, we had one where the mailing list that we produced, when it was exported to be mailed, it didn't include all the addresses that were selected. So we don't know how or why that happened, but we're trying to find solutions to that. And so we're working through those things. But I would expect to have 6 or 7 items on each agenda, probably through at least the end of October.
Thank you. I must call everyone's attention to the agenda where we have had 2 items postponed earlier than today, number 3 and number 4. And today, the 5th item, Stanford Commons, Planned Development of Preliminary Subdivision, was also postponed. So if you are a person who is here for that particular project, the planning commission will not be having a public hearing on that today, or hearing any testimony about it. So now we're going to start with the Rosewood Park Alley and Street Vacation, PLN PCM 2019-01036 and PLN PCM 2019-01037. And Chris Earl is presenting this. Chris?
Madam Chair, before we begin, I
Yes.
need to ask if at the last planning commission meeting we read the COVID statement that we're required to read now in order to meet remotely. Does anybody remember if we did that last time?
We did not.
Determination lasts for 30 days. We're gonna need to read that before we proceed. I have. If I can share my screen, I can give you the template from which to read.
Thank you.
I think. I had it here a second ago. I don't know who has the power to give me the sharing rights.
One moment.
Michaela, can you move the presenter mode to Paul? There we go.
I'm doing it right now. It's just lagging.
Okay, I got it.
Pardon.
Thanks. I got it. All right. Here is the language.
Okay. I, Brenda K. Shear, Vice Chair of the Planning Commission and chairing the meeting today, hereby determine that conducting the Planning Commission meeting at the anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. The World Health Organization, the President of the United States, the Governor of Utah, the Salt Lake County Health Department, Salt Lake County Mayor, and the Mayor of Salt Lake City have all recognized a global pandemic exists related to the new strain of the coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, which we know as COVID-19. But due to the state of emergency caused by the global pandemic, I find that conducting a meeting at an anchor location under the current state of public health emergency constitutes a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the location. The determination lasts for 30 days from the date that the chair reads the statement at the beginning of the meeting or the date specified in the determination.
Okay, I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we can go to Chris.
Just waiting for presenter controls. Good evening, everybody. There we go. Okay. Let's see. Can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. So this is a request from Olga Crump of the Real Estate Services Department for a street and alley vacation within Rosewood Park in order to consolidate the property to simplify the permitting process for future improvement projects. These requests were brought before the Planning Commission on January 22nd, seeking a recommendation for a street closure and alley vacation. The request for a street closure has been amended and is now a request for a street vacation. Reason for the change in request is that it was determined that while a street closure will close the streets to vehicular travel and convert them to another public use or purpose, it does not actually dissolve the streets. In order to dissolve the streets, they will need to be vacated. Let's see. Rosewood Park is located at approximately 1400 North, 1200 West. In the Rose Park area of Salt Lake City, the park is located between 1200 West and I-15 and encompasses approximately 28 acres. The proposed street and alley vacation involves 6 unimproved streets and 5 unimproved alleys within Rosewood Park. The park was built over a section of the Kinney and Gorley's improved subdivision. The subdivision was platted in 1887, but never developed as intended. Development in the area did not follow the street pattern that the plat created, leaving the dedicated streets and alleys within Rosewood Park disconnected from a road network system. The streets and alleys within the park exist only on paper. They were never constructed as intended and do not physically exist. No physical modifications will be made to Rosewood Park as part of these applications. This request is to remove these alleys and streets from the plat in order to consolidate the parcels and form one parcel to make it easier to obtain building permits for future improvement projects. This slide shows the existing parcels, streets, and alleys that currently exist within Rosewood Park on paper only. This slide highlights the streets and alleys that will be vacated with this request. This slide shows the Kinney and Gorley's improved plat that was recorded in 1887. It shows how the parcels were originally platted. The pop-out shows the area of the plat where Rosewood Park is located. You can see parcel streets and alleys shown here, but they don't physically exist within the park. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward a favorable recommendation to City Council with the condition that the closed streets and vacated alleys as well as remaining parcels will be consolidated into one parcel. And that is my presentation for that.
Hey, Brenda, you were muted.
Okay, is there anyone here from the Public Services or the Real Estate Services Division to speak to this, or shall we move on to the public hearing?
There's nobody in attendance from Real Estate Services.
Okay. So everyone should be aware that this is coming at the request of the city itself. I'm going to open up the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this issue?
I do not see any hands up from members of the public. Nor an email.
Thank you. 10 more seconds and that's going to be over. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, seeing no interest in discussion, and open it up to the Planning Commission. For questions to Chris or a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you, Sarah. Or was it Amy? No, Sarah.
It's Maureen.
Oh, Maureen, sorry.
I know I look like Sarah, but okay. Based on the findings and analysis in the staff report, the policy considerations for street vacation and alley vacation, and the input received, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the street vacation and alley vacation proposed in PLN PCM 2019-01036 and PLN PCM 2019-01037 with the condition listed in the staff report.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Sarah. We have a motion from Maureen and a second from Sarah. Is there any further discussion? If not, I will take a vote, starting in the same order again. Amy?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Andres?
Yay.
Carolyn?
Agree.
Crystal?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And Matt?
Yes.
We have unanimously approved this motion. And now we will move on to the second case in our agenda, the West End Valley vacation. We could all use a vacation. We have two of them today. So West End Valley Street vacation, sorry, at approximately 740 West, 900 South. And again, Chris will be presenting this.
Madam Chair, before Chris begins, I have Ian Percy as the primary presenter. And
Okay.
WebEx is not allowing me to make a panelist.
Oh,
So, Ian, I can't even. Ian,
Hello. Yes, I'm here.
I am not able to make you a panelist. Does Max have your presentation? If not, you may want to pop out and rejoin the meeting, and perhaps that would resolve the technical difficulty.
We don't have, you can hear me, we don't have an actual presentation. We're just going to make a few short comments after Chris'
Okay,
presentation.
perfect. Okay, wonderful. Okay, thank you. Whew.
Thank you.
I'll meet you again. Thank you. Pardon that interruption. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, can everybody see that okay?
yes.
Okay, so this is a request by West End LLC, property owner, to vacate a small triangular portion of the alley abutting the west side of the property at 740 West, 900 South. This is not a request to vacate the entire alley. The applicant is requesting to vacate this portion of the alley in order to acquire the property to square off the southwestern corner of his property to prepare for future development. The alley is located between 700 West and 800 West, just west of I-15, and between Genesee Avenue and 900 South. The portion of alley requested to be vacated abuts the west side of the property located at 740 West, 900 South, represented by this red triangle down here. Shown in red is the entire alley. This portion is to remain open, so this alley will remain open. This portion's not being requested to be closed. The only portion that is requested to be vacated is the small 560 square foot triangle portion at the entrance to the alley of 900 South, which is right down here. If approved, the portion of alley vacated would be incorporated into the adjacent parcel located at 740 West, 900 South. This parcel is one of 11 that will be included in a proposed commercial and multifamily residential development. The applicant has been working with the RDA for the redevelopment of the subject site. This redevelopment will include the rehabilitation of 2 existing vacant buildings, which will allow for restaurant and retail uses. The inclusion of the portion of alley that is requested to be vacated will allow the applicant to provide the required off-street parking for this portion of the development. This site plan shows the parking layout for the proposed development. The area in blue shows the triangular alley portion and how it would be utilized to add off-street parking for the development. You can see in here, this is the alley portion, and these are the portions of parking that would be added to the development. With the inclusion of the alley portion, 6 more off-street parking spaces can be provided within the development. I'd also like to make note that 2 petitions related to this project have already been before the commission. The first one was for the vacation of a portion of the alley north of the subject parcel, right here. The other was for rezoning of the development properties from M1 to RMU. Both requests received positive recommendation from the commission. These slides are some site photos showing the alley adjacent parcel at 740 West, 900 South. You can see the request is essentially this area right here. And these are pictures of the subject parcel. Public process included sending notice of the project and request for comments to the chairs of the Paulbrook and Glendale Community Councils. Early public notice was sent to the property owners and residents within 300 feet of the project area, and planning staff hosted a virtual open house on the Salt Lake City website to gather public comment. No public comment was received by planning staff. There was positive recommendation from the Glendale Community Council for those previously mentioned applications that are associated with this. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council with the condition that the vacated alley be consolidated into the parcel located at approximately 740 West, 900 South. And that is the presentation.
Thank you. Is the applicant here? Would he like to speak? He or she?
Yeah, this is Max. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. Sorry, I had a bad connection, which is why Ian was in there. I'm just gonna, I've been before you guys before. I think this is my second or third time. I'm Max Kareth. I represent the property owners. The few words I just want to say is we applied for the building permits in April to actually go forward with this phase. We should get there pretty soon, hopefully within the next few weeks. And obviously, I think squaring off the lot would just make we're going to obviously create access off the alley for those 2 buildings. I think just being able to square off the lot would, I think, be very advantageous to just a presentation and just bring it in. So we're hopeful that we can actually get that little wedge under control. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you. I'm going to now open the public hearing. Michaela, are there any people who wish to speak?
I do not see any hands up.
Hey, Michaela,
I'm
there
looking.
was, there's an email from a Cindy saying that she can't see how to raise her hand. I don't see a Cindy, but maybe this is Cynthia.
There's a Cynthia. Yeah.
You want to see what item she's would like to discuss?
Cynthia? Cynthia, this is Michaela. Would you like to speak to this item? Okay, she sent a chat. Okay. No, this is not the item.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the community council? Okay, so we have no one. I want to thank you, Chris, for bringing the history of this project up. People should know that the Planning Commission has already heard and approved many aspects of this project. So I'm going to close the public hearing and open it up to the Planning Commission for questions and comments.
Since we've seen this, I'm happy to make a motion unless anybody has comments to make. Seeing none. Is that okay, Madam
Yes,
Chair?
yes, please,
Okay.
please do.
Based on the findings and analysis in the staff report, the policy considerations for the alley vacation and the input received, I move that the Planning Commission forward a positive recommendation to the City Council for the alley vacation proposed in PLNPCM 2020-00268 with the condition listed in the staff report.
I'll second that.
I have a motion from Sarah and a second from Carolyn. We'll proceed to a vote. Amy?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Andres?
Yay.
Carolyn?
Agree.
Crystal?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Matt? Matt, you'll need to unmute. Matt?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. The motion passes. And now we will move on to item number 3. Items number 3, 4, and 5 have been withdrawn from the agenda. So we will now move on to the zoning map amendment at approximately 1301 and 1321 South State Street. This is case number PLN PCM 2020-00328, and Katia will be presenting this to us.
Thank you. I will be sharing my content here. Now I need to be able to share my content.
You're the presenter.
I am now. Let's see if I can do this again. I'm still not having my items. It's somebody else's content that I see on my computer. Michaela.
How can I help?
The items that I'm seeing on my, the share content are not mine, are somebody else's. Is there a way of changing it to mine?
I'm not seeing any other content, Katja. I could grab your presentation and share it if you're not able to do it.
There.
Looks like it's coming, Katja.
Not. Do you see a planning commission presentation?
We don't see it yet, Katja.
Okay, let's try this again.
Katja, I just saw a black screen. It looked like it was starting to share.
There you go.
Okay. All right. Sorry. Thank you.
It's okay. These things happen.
So this is a zoning map amendment at 1301 and 1321 South State Street. The request is to zone from commercial corridor to a farm-based urban neighborhood 2 FBUN2. The reason for the applicant asking for that rezone is they desire to consolidate the two parcels, remove existing buildings, and build a mixed-use building that will be owner-occupied and financially attainable. Our recommendation is that the Planning Commission recommends to the City Council according to the analysis and the conditions that I'm gonna go through. So here's the aerial photograph. The area, the subject area is in blue, and this is our beloved restaurant, Coachman's, here in the corner, and then next to it on the south is a commercial building. So these are the land uses existing right now on those parcels. The zoning on that area is CC, commercial corridor. And staff finds that this is a key intersection in Salt Lake City. State Street is a very important gateway, and 13 South is a major east-west arterial street. And so this corner is very important, and it's crucial that a good development be placed in there. The site is such a good, an important to Salt Lake City that there are several master plans and plans that are relevant to the site. Starting with the Plan Salt Lake, which emphasizes a lot in the types of housing provided for Salt Lake City, basic need for safety, social interaction, and services needed for the well-being of the community. And then narrowing it down is the Central Community Master Plan, which talks a lot about urban design requirements, especially on that specific neighborhood. It talks about safety and the need for safety, and also the need for new mixed-use designations to support more livable communities. In addition to that, we have this area is part of the RDA, the Development Agency. It's a project area. And the State Street Community Reinvestment Area Plan talks about having higher aesthetics on, on the streets, support for population growth, and also talks about mixed-use development options for increased residential capacity. And then, in addition, there's Salt Lake City has been working along with South Salt Lake and has drafted a master plan for State Street called Life on State, still in draft format, but it has a lot of the community input that I thought it was useful. And it calls for more density along State Street, more height, and development that better engages the sidewalk and street. Like I said, the current zoning is CC, and staff finds that State Street has a lot of zoning that is that allows for retail and commercial, but it is underzoned for other zoning for other land uses. Doing a comparison between the zonings, the CC and the FBUN2, we noticed that the CC requires more setbacks, more parking, less height and density, making it very hard for projects that are mixed use and have a higher density. Another comparison that we did is the design guidelines. And as you can see on this chart here, even though the South State Street Corridor provides additional design guidelines, the FBUN has definitely has more design guidelines that provide for a better project. It's also noticeable on the adjacent properties how the CC zoning district has affected the pattern of development. As you can see, on the across the street from this site, you can see a lot of commercial with lower height, with drive-throughs and parking in front of the project. A lot of these elements keep the some of these properties from being developed to their maximum. This is across the street from the subject property, looking north, and these are adjacent properties right to the east of the subject property. There's a multifamily residential, and on the very south there's a government agency. It's the Utah State Department of Workforce and Human Resources. Staff finds that the development under the CC zone does not encourage the type of development that the different master plans call for, and that the type of development in the farm-based zone, the UN2, has a potential for additional housing to be more sustainable, because it's going to be on a very crucial corner with a lot of transportation alternatives. and to be safer because there will be more eyes on the street and better design that also will affect, how it interacts with the street. As I said before, our recommendation is to a favorable recommendation to the city council, but there is a condition of approval because right now this property is 2 parcels, and we recommend that it be placed as one of the corner sites that are allowed in the FBUN2 as with additional height as other corners in that zone. And in order to be placed on the zoning ordinance, and I have underlined the language that it would be added to the zoning ordinance, it would have to be 1 parcel, not 2 parcels. So this condition would be that they consolidate those 2 parcels anytime before an ordinance is published. And in addition to this, I just wanted to relate that we have sent notices to 3 of the community councils where this site abuts, in the Liberty Wells, Central City, and Ballpark. We were asked by the Liberty Wells Community Council to be part of an online meeting on this project, and the participants of this meeting were very much in favor of this this rezoning. We also received, we posted that as an open house, online open house, and we have received 5 emails. 4 of those were very favorable of this project, and 1 email had a concern about gentrification of this area. Also received 1 phone call that did not oppose specifically the rezoning, but it had a concern about a piecemeal approach of rezoning that area. And then after I sent the staff report, I also received an email from the RDA in favor of this rezoning also. This is my presentation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Kadio. Are there any questions
Yeah,
for
I mean,
staff at this time?
I know the RDA's, again, you kind of hit there on the end a little bit, but maybe just dive a little deeper for me. The RDA is doing a whole rezone and redo of State Street. The whole area needs to be revitalized and revived, and just talk more in depth how this all fits really into that. And you kind of touched on the end, but how this fits in the long-term view of what we're doing with State Street.
So the plan for it's the State Street Community Reinvestment Area Plan calls for additional height, better design.
But when, I guess, when are we going to like rezone and really deal with the zoning implications of the State Street stuff? Or is there a timeline for that? Has that been set out?
So this is Nick. I can weigh in on that. It certainly is one of our priority projects to start. As with many other things, we need to have the resource to be able to do that. And so you may have recalled a process that the city did in conjunction with South Salt Lake for, I think it was 2 years ago now. It's called the Life on State Project, which created a master plan. We do plan on adopting that as an update to the applicable master plans for State Street, and at the same time, take a look at the zoning along the whole corridor, try to figure out what's right for that. But that process is probably not going to happen this calendar year.
So are we like a year out? Or are we like 10 years out, 5 years out?
It depends on when resources are available to do the work. And unfortunately, right now we have such a backlog of projects that we need to try to reprioritize how we work and what we work on, and the types of things that, frankly, we require to go through a process in order to get to that work. And so that's some of the things that we're working on outside of this particular project. It just so happens that these applicants are further ahead than the city in this.
Satya, do you have, is your applicant here, please, to speak?
I am here. I don't know if you can hear me.
We can. Are you Mr. Anderson?
Yes, this is Glenn Anderson.
Thank you. You may go forward, and you have 10 minutes.
Okay. I represent Mike Nichols. He is also here, and at some point may want to chime in. This is a project that he has been pursuing in concept for the past 3 years. And thanks to help from both Nick and Katia, has come up with what is a solution for him to achieve a mixed use for this location. This location really can do a lot to revitalize the corner. There's several conceptual plans that we have produced, but it all depends on whether we're approved at this point to move ahead. Mike's goal in developing this is to create affordable ownership, not apartments, but more townhomes, to bring some retail so that it is facing State Street to give it a new look, bring the life back to the corner. I know Mike has been there with Coachman ever going back into the 50s, or at least the 60s, and has seen the area take quite a downturn. We are aware that by going to this new zoning that we will have many more restrictions on it in terms of what is going to be required. And because of those requirements, I think we're going to be able to deliver a better overall project as a whole. We're excited about this, and I don't know anybody more excited about it than what the owner is. And I think that the steps that have been taken, the research that's gone into it, this is going to be a desirable project. Adding one more story to the height of the project actually allows for this project to become more affordable. So we are excited that staff RDA is supportive of the application. We're excited that the neighborhood community is behind us. And that this actually could start to revitalize a very downturned section of State Street. And I can let you guys ask questions, or Mike, if you wanted to chime in. And so mostly if you have questions.
Okay. I'm not sure if I'm on or not.
You are, Mike.
You're
Okay.
on.
Okay, thank you. Am I allowed to speak now or not, or?
Absolutely.
Okay. So basically, yeah, we've been there since 1975. The restaurant was built by my father. We acquired the property to the south of us when it was after it had been separated from the apartments, which was back in let's see, 2010, I believe it was that we did that. And you know, since we've been there, and I've been there since day one of 75. It just, you know, obviously it's that area has a lot of problems. I looked at my building and I decided I need to do something with it. And either I could spend some money and give it a cosmetic look, or I could do something that I think would make a big statement to that whole area, which is provide some good housing, actually really good housing for a low price. That's kind of the same mantra we have at the restaurant. And we would provide retail all the way on the bottom, plenty of parking within the structure. None of it would be visible. I've done a lot of investigation on this, and on top of it, I think that it's a great location. To me, it's kind of the entrance of the city, right there, heart of the city at least. And you've got great, you know, location. When I say you've got tracks just down the street from me, you've got bus stops right along State Street everywhere. You've got connections to, you know, main arteries of I-80 and I-15 just down State Street, just down 13th South. You know, I think it's great if somebody wants to work downtown where they could be there in 5 minutes, bike or train or, you know, bus. So, I mean, I look at it and, you know, at first we were looking at hotel or something, you know, more in the hospitality business like we're in now. But I definitely think that this would be the overall better use of that property. Unfortunately, in order to do things, we need a little bit more height in order to make the whole thing work. And I'm trying to keep this as the low end on the scale of purchasing a house. And right now, or an ownership of a condo, I should say. And I think I can achieve that if we can get that little bit of height. And I always want to give, to me, the most for the least, and that's what my intention is. If you see the amenities that we had planned, you know, I mean, there's going to be like a second rooftop area for people, amenities where it's going to be, you know, barbecue spas, things like this, so that people can enjoy up above the street level there. And I think it'd be a really great project, and I think it's really needed in that area. That design currently of my building on that it's called State Street Plaza. It's just a very poor design, and I hate to put money into something that is that poorly designed. It really would be great, and I'd be really happy as heck, and I think the community would as well after speaking to them. So I would hope and you know, wish for you guys to definitely, you know, give us the next step, which would be revitalizing that corner. It's a tough project, but I can do it.
Brenda, you're trying to speak, but you're muted.
This happens. So thank you, Mr. Nichols. So are there any questions for the applicant at this time? If not, I will move to the public hearing. I'll open up the public hearing. Is there anyone from the community council here, Michaela?
No, and I do not see an email.
And thank you. And I would remind the commission that there are 4 letters in the document, so that were received. Seeing no further interest in the public hearing, I'm going to close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for questions and discussion. Does anybody want to talk about the 50 feet versus 65 feet? Nope. Okay. Do I hear, can I hear, get a motion then, please?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Matt.
Based on the information in the staff report, the information presented, the input received in the public hearing, I move the planning commission recommend to the city council approve the proposed map amendment PLN PCM 2020-00328 at 1301 and 1321 South State from CC to FBUN2 with with the conditions listed in the staff report.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Who is that? Amy?
Maureen.
Maureen, sorry. You look like Amy too. Okay, so I have a motion from Matt and a second from Maureen. Is there any further discussion? So we'll go through the roll call. Amy?
Yeah, Mr. Nichols, I just want to say good luck on this. I look forward to seeing what you do. Yes.
Maureen?
Enthusiastically, yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Andres? Andres? You're muted. Can someone unmute Andres? Carolyn?
Agree.
Crystal?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes, as someone who is frequenting Coachman's and can attest to the mentality if you get a lot for the lease, I vote yes.
Okay. Did we ever get a vote from Andres?
Yay, I vote yay.
Okay, thank you. So it is unanimous in favor of the applicant. So we will make a recommendation, excuse me, yes, we will make, this is a recommendation to City Council for the approval of a zoning map amendment. And so we will move on to our number 7 item on the agenda, the ADU and special exception at approximately 1362 South, 1300 East. This is being presented by Amanda Roman.
Hi.
Hi,
Thank
Amanda.
you. Hi. Nice to meet you guys virtually. I'll share my screen. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. All right, so Dwight Yee, on behalf of the property owner, is requesting conditional use approval for a detached accessory dwelling unit and special exception approval to allow grading and retaining walls that exceed the maximum permitted height of 4 feet. The subject property is located at 1362 South, 1300 East, and is in the R15000 single-family residential zoning district. There's an existing single-family home on the property, which is currently vacant. The house will be undergoing a renovation at the same time as the construction of the ADU. The ADU will have 1 bedroom and is approximately 640 square feet. It's 16 feet, 4 inches in height, and will be located in the rear yard of the subject property. Special exception approval may be granted administratively. The staff has referred the petition to the Planning Commission because the construction of the ADU as proposed is dependent on the requested grading and retaining walls. The grading and retaining walls will exceed the allowable 4 feet in the rear and side yards of the property. Staff is also referring the special exception to the Planning Commission based on the complexity of the project, uniqueness of the site, and to allow residents to address their concerns. The Planning Commission has final decision-making authority for requested special exceptions. Staff recommends approval of the conditional use for the detached ADU with the conditions outlined in the staff report. Staff also recommends approval of the special exception request for grading and retaining walls exceeding 4 feet in height. The subject property is located on the corner of Harrison Avenue and 1300 East. The property is approximately 9,300 square feet in size. The east side of Harrison Avenue has significantly steep slopes, which is why special exceptions are being requested to create a buildable area for the ADU. The subject property has an average slope between 26 and 46%. Under current code, properties with more than a 30% slope are considered unbuildable, which makes this property unique. Staff recognizes that if the rear yard is to be used, special exceptions will be required. Staff has worked extensively with the applicant to reduce the visual impact of the proposed retaining walls. Since the first proposal, the retaining walls along the street front have been reduced in height and additional terraces have been added. The applicant has also proposed landscaping between the sidewalk and the retaining walls along Harrison Avenue and between the rear property line and the retaining wall yard setback. The landscaping will help hold the grading in place, mask the overall height of the walls, and create a barrier between the subject property and the adjacent property to the west. The details of each retaining wall will be described in the upcoming slides. So residents are concerned about the viability of building on such a steep lot. They're also opposed to having the required parking space on Harrison Avenue rather than on site, citing the overparking of the street and the steep slope of Harrison. They believe adding an additional car or cars would be a safety hazard. The applicant originally proposed to have the parking on site, but changed their plans after receiving review comments from transportation. The transportation division stated that while parking on site is preferred, based on the radius dimensions shown, a vehicle could not turn into the proposed space of the original site plan. However, based on the dimensions shown, there is more than required 20 feet of depth to back out if the vehicle were to pull in perpendicular to the street. And then they also said, even though the adjacent street has a slope to it, parking on the street would not be an issue. If parking is done on site, the site distance issues at the driveway would need to be addressed. Staff asked the applicant to adjust their plans to accommodate the parking on site, but they've stated that in order to create that buildable area for the ADU, the proposed retaining walls need to remain where they are. The placement of the walls wouldn't allow for the adequate turning radius and also block the required site distance triangle for a vehicle to back up, which would create a safety hazard for pedestrians and cars on Harrison. The applicant is now proposing to use the legal on-street parking, which is shown on the plan. And then on this site plan, I'm going to go through each section, but the retaining walls requiring special exception approval, which are in the required setbacks, are in red, and then the buildable areas in orange. So here are renderings of the proposed ADU, which also show what the renovated single-family home will look like upon completion. The rear and eastern walls of the ADU will be built into the slope of the property. The ADU will be set back 32 feet from the side property line along Avenue and 5 feet from the rear property line. It'll be accessed from Harrison Avenue via pedestrian walkway that leads to a 5-foot-tall privacy gate, which will be in line with the proposed retaining walls. So here are photos of the existing family home, which faces 1300 East. And then as you can see, moving down the photos, that Harrison is quite steep, and then also the existing homes are built into the slope. The bottom row shows the existing retaining wall along the southern border of the subject property against the sidewalk. Here are photos of the subject property, the entrance of the ADU. The gate will be moved back. And the proposed parking spot is approximately where the white car is in the photo. And then the existing curb cut will be removed to prevent people from pulling in, and landscaping will be planted in front of the proposed retaining walls along the street. Additional photos of the rear yard. The top row is from the west property line, which is the rear, looking up towards the east, and then the bottom row is east looking west towards the rear property line, and the shed is about where the ADU will be placed, and obviously the shed will be removed. So you can see the slope in these photos. Okay, so I'm going to dive into the specifics of each section of the request. So this is a site elevation of the subject property from Harrison Avenue. The slope is approximately 26% along the sidewalk. The property line does not actually run directly against the sidewalk. It's set back about 3 feet, and then the retaining walls would be about 10 feet from the back of sidewalk. The applicant has proposed 6 terrace walls, which are located in the rear and side yard area. Walls number 3 through 6 require special exception approval because they exceed 4 feet in height. Staff has worked extensively with the applicant to reduce the overall height of the walls to create a more pedestrian-friendly environment and to hopefully make them less imposing. The original plans proposed 2 retaining walls nearly 8 and 9 feet tall. We asked this applicant to create more terraces and reduce the exposed height of each wall to under 6 feet. The applicant was able to accomplish this outside of wall number 5. This section of wall is a little over 7 feet tall, but can't be reduced any further because the top of the wall hits the existing grade of the upper area of the property. And it also ties into a retaining wall, which is within the buildable area. Staff feels comfortable with this proposal because the retaining wall will not be directly against the sidewalk and will have a landscape buffer, which will help reduce the visual impact of the proposal. Okay, so we're moving north across the property. Let's see. This slide includes a rendering of the proposed ADU and the retaining walls along Harrison Avenue. The walls requiring special approval are outlined in red, and those were the ones I discussed in the previous slide. And then you can see how wall number 5 hits the existing grade and ties into the perpendicular wall. And the eastern sidewall of the ADU will be built into the retaining wall that runs perpendicular to Harrison. The majority of this wall is located within the buildable area, but the section where the arrow is pointing is within the required side yard area and needs special exception approval. This section of wall is just under 10 feet tall. And then the 9.5-foot wall to the east is within the buildable area and does not require special exception approval. As I mentioned before, the entrance of the ADU is 32 feet away from the property line. If you're standing at the entrance, the existing slope is 38%. So the slope decreases as the property moves from north to south. So while the proposed retaining walls are taller than those along Harrison Avenue, they will not be perceived as taller in the streets because they're set lower into the slope. To create a buildable area for the ADU, the existing grade will be cut approximately 15 feet and then retained by those 3 sections of perpendicular retaining walls. The largest grade change is in this section of the rear yard. Okay, so this slide is showing renderings of the ADU and proposed retaining walls from the rear property line. The existing slope in the middle of the property, which is where the back of the ADU hits, is approximately 46%. The proposed retaining wall running from north to south is within the required rear yard area and will need special exception approval. The exposed wall will be 5 feet 2 inches at the northernmost section and will gradually increase to nearly 9 feet. The applicant is proposing landscaping in front of the wall to reduce its visual impact and to create a between the property adjacent to the west. The existing grade along the property line will not be altered. And the applicant is also not proposing to change the existing fence along the rear property line. The front portion of the fence is wood, and then the back half is chain link. The landscaping will be in front of the chain link section of fencing. Okay, here is a site elevation from north to south showing the same retaining wall requiring approval. As I mentioned before, the existing grade along the property line will not be altered, but I outlined it in red, so it does increase as you move south. And another site elevation of the same wall, and it shows the slope of the property is approximately 46%, and then you can see the grade, the retaining wall to the east, closest to the home, is within the buildable area, so they don't need special exception approval. And then finally, this is the last section of the property where special exception approval is being requested. The 3 terrace retaining walls along the northern property line are within the required side yard area. Each wall is approximately 5 feet tall, 5 to 5.5, and they tie into the rear retaining wall discussed in the previous 3 slides. The applicant is proposing these walls to create a livable outdoor area for the homeowners. Currently, the rear yard is unusable due to the slope, so these terraces will allow the property to be used in a more functional way. and the existing grade along the north property line will not be altered. So I mailed the notice of the ADU application on May 26, 2020 to properties within, and then I also mailed it to the East Liberty Park, Wasatch Hollow, and Yale Crest community councils. I received comments from 4 residents in the community. I went back and forth a few emails, but 4 total residents. The emails are located within the staff report in attachment H. As mentioned earlier, the main concern of the public is having the parking located on the street instead of the subject property. And then the property to the west is just concerned about the overall grading proposal and the viability of building on a site like this. A notice of special exception was mailed on June 23rd to property owners and residents abutting the subject property and located directly across the street. The East Liberty Park Community Council recommends the Planning Commission require the applicant to reinstate their original off-street parking proposal and remove the parking from the street. Wasatch Hollow said the proposal seems well thought out, and Yale Crest did not provide feedback because their boundary is more than 600 feet away. It was close, so I sent it just to be safe. And then finally, based on the information in the staff report, it is committee staff's opinion that the requested conditional use for the detached ADU meets the applicable standards of approval and recommends the Planning Commission approve the conditional use with conditions of approval listed below. And then based on the information in the staff report and provided by the applicant, it is planning staff's opinion that the proposed grading and retaining walls comply with the special exception standards of approval and recommends the Planning Commission approve the proposed exceptions. And that's my presentation. Thank you. Let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, Amanda. Are there any questions for Amanda at this moment?
If they weren't doing the ADU, they would still be here for a special exception, presumably for all those retaining walls.
Correct.
And is there any reason these two are tied together other than just like convenience and time's sake, or it just, does that make sense?
I mean, it might be a question for the applicant if they were going, if the special exception is denied, if they plan to do the ADU in a different manner.
Or would they do the ADU without they couldn't really do the ADU without the special exemption, but does it matter that they're tied together or not?
Right. So the ADU, as they proposed it, is dependent on the special exception approval because of the slope of the lot. There's really nothing you can do in the back of it.
Right. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Are there any additional questions for Amanda? Amanda, is your applicant here?
He is.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I'm Dwight Yee. I'm the architect working on behalf of the property owner, Brandon Shea, for this property. And I guess if anyone has any specific questions, just speaking to the question that was just previously asked, yes, the only way that this ADU actually really does work is having that retaining wall work done so that we can provide an actual buildable area, a flat buildable area for the kind of ADU itself. As you can see,
you would need to do this retaining wall for what you're doing anyways on the lot. Like you'll always need a retaining wall on that property.
Yes, and in fact, the major retaining wall that's in the buildable area, we're having to replace because it's so damaged. That's the really big 10-foot wall that Amanda had shown that we're tying into. Some of these kind of the shorter retaining walls tie into. That large retaining wall that runs across the back of the property, if you look at the existing photos, that retaining wall actually does exist already, the super tall one. But what happened is in inspecting it, basically because of water damage, it's being blown out right at the kind of joint of the wall and the footer. So we knew that we had to replace that retaining wall no matter what. And so as you can see, and then with the photos, you can see currently what's on the property is they cantilevered out an extremely large porch. That's basically now about 15 or 16 feet in the air. And we're removing that. And so to create some type of outdoor space for them, we went with the approach of terracing because we're not replacing that deck anymore. But you can see from the existing photos how steep that property is. Without some type of terracing, it is unusable effectively.
And then I guess for staff, I think I'm looking curious. So the ADU, and I was trying to figure this out from even just Google Maps, but the ADU is down kind of at the channel lot. It's 5 feet in the rear yard setback, which is will be 5 feet from essentially with the neighbor's side yard because it's a corner lot. Do those windows, because of the slope, do they continue to look down into the next house? Is there any privacy concerns from the ADU standpoint, like looking down in the house that's below this, or probably does it start, the hills kind of level out, from there, and the neighbor's not really concerned about privacy or other issues with the ADU being located right there?
Right. I mean,
because typically you would put a fence up that could block it, but because you have a hill and you're limited to the size of your fence you're going to do on the next side, like how does that play out here?
So the windows along the property line are obscured glass, so that will provide some privacy for the neighbor. And then because the slope of the property, the ADU will be set down lower in the property than it. But I think maybe Dwight can speak to the more of the engineering aspect of it, but the windows will be obscured glass, and then also it is set down. And so I can bring up
so if you look at the section, so those windows that are actually facing the property owner or the west side property, those were required to be obscured, so you couldn't actually see through them. They would provide just daylight only into the ADU. We did provide actual clear glass facing north and south for the ADU inside, so that you can have some views out. There is an existing fence, but basically where we tried to set the floor of the ADU, I would assume that we might be a little bit over the existing wooden fence of the west neighbor, but you would be blocking like at least half of that window still, just because of the elevation. Because the way, if you look at the west side property owner, their driveway actually has their own retaining wall that then steps up right before our property line and where the fence starts. So their wall is actually sitting lower. They have a wall, and then their fence is sitting. The fence is, as you can see in that photo on the lower right-hand corner, you can see that the fence is actually following the grade, similar to the grade that we're showing, and it's not where the driveway is of the owner. So I understand your concern about if they were putting a fence, that fence is potentially lower than what the 6 feet that you'd want for privacy, but where that fence is running right now is, closer to the grade. So, I would assume that we would cover, at least 2 to 3 feet of that window.
So are there any additional questions for the applicants or the staff at this time? I know this is a fairly complicated project from the standpoint of, especially from the number of walls and so forth that's in here and the slope of the site. Okay. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the public meeting and offer a chance to anyone from any of the adjacent community councils to speak. Michaela, do we have anyone from the community council here?
It does not look like we have someone from the community council, but we do have Cynthia who would like to speak. Cynthia?
Hi. Hi, can you give us your name, please, for the record? And you'll have 2 minutes.
I'm Cynthia Spiegel. I live at 1265 Harrison, a property immediately to the west, where I resided for the past 36 years and have certainly been enjoying the privacy of having that wooded slope next to me. So the question was asked about whether the neighbor has privacy concerns, and I would say that I do. And I think in particular, not so much on the front part where you were discussing it, but towards on the rear of the property where the chain link fence is. I would really like to see something, an obscured fence or something replacing the chain link. I don't know if that's possible or not, but I want to go on to say that in the staff report, I see that it says that slopes over 30% are considered unbuildable, yet this is probably going to be approved, and I feel it's being shoehorned into a really inappropriate slope that could end up being unsafe and unstable for soil movement and water drainage issues for both their property and also the on-site parking is placing a very large burden on our street. Is this coming through okay? I'm hearing heavy breathing.
I muted someone. Please continue, ma'am.
Okay. Places a heavy, large burden on the street for the on-site parking component. There's several multifamily homes, 3 right across the street, which compete for this parking. And it's very, very steep and very, very close to the blind corner of 1300 East. It's not very safe in the winter conditions as it is, and then adding more parking and more in and out there, I think is really going to be a problem for us. I have a lot of people complaining to me on the street about it already. I say, don't tell me, tell you guys. I've submitted the written comments that I know Amanda has already attached to the record on the project, and I would prefer that the project petition be denied. That's it.
Thank you. Madam Speaker, I have one more member not with her hand up. I'm just going to check on Brooke and see if she would like to speak to this. Brooke?
No, I'm okay. I'm just listening.
Just listening. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Those are the only comments.
Seeing no other persons wishing to speak, I will close the public hearing and we'll move the issue back to the commission for discussion.
Madam Chair, given that our role in this is to find a reasonable mitigation to some detrimental impact, can we do a little bit more discussion on why we can't make alterations to do on-site parking for the one stall?
Yes, you can certainly ask the staff about the on-site parking.
Yeah, I'd like to, be more directed to understand better why we can't make some alteration to the location of the ADU to allow for greater space to do what the on-site parking, other than just like, oh, we can't have this is the buildable area. I think there's probably more to it than that. So I'd like to just get a little bit better understanding of what the limitation is for that as we look to do some reasonable mitigation for that impact.
Amanda, you want to address that?
Honestly, I went back and forth with engineer or transportation and the applicant on the parking, and Mr. Yee stated to me and also put on the plans that the retaining walls are required in the location that he presented. But that, that being said, if the ADU could be moved by 50 feet to allow for that turning radius.
So Amanda, are they required by whom in the location? Are they required to be there because that's the design they're proposing? Or are they required to be there because of transportation and engineering? I'm just trying to get a sense of why we can't get a little bit more space for a car to park on site and better understand what's available for us to perhaps modify.
Right.
Dwight, I think you can also answer this questions if you want to weigh in.
Yeah, if I could help explain that a little bit. I actually tried to fit, so transportation said that I could do just a pull-in directly offsite space if you just pulled in directly straight and not do the turning radius. Because the turning radius, there would be no way to make a turning radius work regardless, based on transportation's the design for their radius. We couldn't ever originally pull in and turn 90 degrees as I originally hoped for. So he said there was enough depth to then pull in directly into the space off of Harrison and just pull directly in, and there would be enough depth. The two challenges I have when I was trying to lay that out is, by code, the parking space has to be 10 feet away from the rear property line. So that means I'm shifting any parking driveway to the east, into the hill. So I'm moving up the hill. And then that's what happened is I was then having to deal with the retaining wall where I'm okay I was trying to adjust that lower retaining wall, but because transportation also has the triangle, the view triangle requirement, where I can't have anything above 30 inches, that's in a 10-foot triangle from the property line back along the road, I'm coming into the retaining wall that is now the 10-foot retaining wall. That's tying in to actually then create the ADU pad. So that's the struggle I'm having. I was trying to actually continue to have a space on site, but I'm now actually hitting against 2 city requirements, which is now giving me very little room to move in terms of options. That's
okay. That's helpful. So Amanda, do we have any purview in dealing with that triangulation issue from transportation? Because I honestly I built a garage with an alley access in 2007. I don't have that triangulation requirement. And I'm fine getting in and out of my garage to the alley behind me. So I don't know when that requirement came into effect, or what's the rule we may have in helping transportation give some variance to that? I don't know. I'm just asking.
I am honestly not sure when the rule went into effect, but that was the guidance. That was just the guidance that was provided by transportation.
So Amanda, when you say guidance, is that this is what we'd like to see happen, or is this like this is what you have to do?
I was told this is what you have to do per section E2.C1 of the Division of Transportation. It's a clear sight zone area of 10 feet from the back of the sidewalk.
Yeah, it's a transportation requirement.
So I would like to ask another question relative to this. So did we ever consider altering the rear yard setback as a part of this application so that the driveway could go right in next to the other driveway of the owner next door, which is basically where it is now? There's not a driveway there, but that's where the alley sort of is.
Yeah, and it's paved right there and it goes to the shed. The original proposal shows the ADU and the location that it is now. And I think that speaks to what Dwight was saying earlier about if you move the ADU to the east, it'll mess with the proposed retaining walls.
No, what I was saying was if you can't put it, could you reduce the rear yard setback so that you could actually put the driveway there?
When we had originally shown, so it's the biggest thing is it's in code. It's the parking space itself was supposed to be 10 feet away from the rear property line.
Right.
And that's why we used to have this kind of 90-degree turn in the original proposal to try and get out of that 10 feet. If we do this linear, if you allow me to go within the 10 feet or be closer to the 10 feet of the side yard, then potentially I could do a pull-in that is just direct. But I didn't think that was an option. It didn't look like an option because it's very clear in the zoning code that it's required any parking space to be considered a viable parking space has to be 10 feet away from rear and side yard.
This is Nick. I don't know if anyone has that code section that requires the parking to be 10 feet away from property line, but I can certainly look that up. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, I have it. It is, well, that actually wouldn't apply. That would be, so this code is actually saying 10 feet away from the property line of any intersecting street. So that's actually incorrect. I'm sorry. I thought I had it.
So I'm interested in this approach. I certainly am. My driveway is not 10 feet from my property line at all. If anything, it's like right to it.
Yeah.
So I know in my neighborhood, there's a lot of driveways that are abutting or even they share an easement. So I feel like the standard for putting it in that setback is prevalent in any neighborhood. Somewhat the differences of approaches for driveways over the years, and I feel like that's I'd like to maybe like pursue that option to give them the ability to do just a pull in based on reducing the rear yard setback.
Right, and so sorry, there's a lot of feedback, but section 18.80.040 driveway restrictions states that adjacent driveways must be separated by an island at least 12 feet in width. So I'm not sure.
So Amanda and/or Nick, is that in our to create that as a condition to allow that to happen in this application to provide a reasonable mitigation for an impact?
So Amanda, that was in Title 18, you said?
18.80.040 driveway restrictions.
So the planning commission, unless that section specifically gives the planning commission any authority to really do anything in terms, if that section has another avenue to go, then that can be sought after, and you could potentially add some sort of a condition that if allowed by code, that be reduced according to whatever requirements of the code are. And just real quick, it's very, even with the clear view triangle at the sidewalk, that section doesn't allow, the planning commission doesn't have the authority to modify that through a process. So at least through any of these processes that are before you right now. So you can't really alter that, that requirement.
I can also share the screen and show you the PDF that was sent to me by transportation with those guidelines if you'd like.
You know, I understood. I totally get it. Part of this is just talking through it for us and for the community that's participating. So I do need to see the PDF.
Yeah, I wouldn't even recommend trying to get around this one, especially I was out there today and that is a very, very steep street. And to not be able to see people kind of at the top of the hill who are heading down, you know, in the sight zone, that is just not a good idea. So we do want to try to move, if there's a driveway, as close to the fence line of the neighboring property as possible. I've never heard of the 10-foot driveway setback, so I'm a little bit, I don't think we've had this issue before. There are lots of places around where driveways are very close to each other. So can we, so what do you guys want to do? Amy?
I'm personally interested in, I don't want to craft this condition, but I'm personally interested in following what Nick suggested, that we approve a condition where we allow a pull-in parking spot on the west side of the ADU in the setback if code allows us to do that.
I think that's a pretty good
I
That's
don't
a
want
pretty
to,
good
I don't want to
condition.
make, I don't want to verbalize the condition though, because
I think you just did.
well, I don't know if Paul wants to review my words, then that's great, but I want to make sure it's appropriately phrased. I'm personally interested in that approach, since we can't really like deny it and we're looking at how do we mitigate any potential impacts. I also think that gives another little buffer to the neighbor on the west. But honestly, there's so many driveways in my neighborhood that are right next to each other. I think requiring an island of 12 feet is like something for the suburbs, not really an urban reality or what we really need to be doing. So I don't know if Paul wants to chime in on the appropriate way to frame said condition, and then I would be willing to make a motion.
Hey, Amanda, can you give me that code section in 18 again?
18.80.040.
Okay, thank you.
Amy, can you restate that condition? I want to walk through it.
Okay, to allow a pull-in parking spot along the western property line if the code allows the planning commission that action. We're unsure, I guess Nick is unsure if there's a provision in that code that specifically allows or disallows us to do that.
Yeah, that makes me a little bit nervous to have a condition that's hanging out there depending on whether it meets the code. So
hey,
I don't know if Nick can resolve that right now.
I can resolve that right now. That section is it's titled parking lot construction, and it defines a parking lot as an area of parking with 4 or more vehicles. Technically, this would not be a parking lot, so it wouldn't apply.
So I could make that condition of just allowing a pull-in parking spot within the rear yard setback on the western property line. Nick.
Yeah, I'm thinking through that. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's fine.
So can I give you guys the code section that was given to us from Scott Browning and zoning on the initial comments, the exact one that he referenced?
I think Nick might find that helpful, yeah.
It's 21A.24.070.E.2.
All right.
Give us a second.
Yeah, I may need you to keep that when I navigate to it.
So, okay.
21A 44.
24.
21A 24.
Yeah.
24.
070 E2.
Okay, so what that's saying is that you can't, so that's just the corner side yard setback requirement of 10 feet. And he's probably referring to parking in a required yard section that's, let me get to that. Yeah, so there's a provision in the parking chapter 21A 44060, parking restrictions within yards, that in single family zones, parking's not permitted between the front lot line and the front line of the principal building, and that's in corner side yards. It's the same in front yards as well.
So does that apply to this case?
So it would apply, and basically what it would mean is that that driveway space can't be counted as a legal parking stall. So obviously people park in their driveways all the time.
Right.
In that area, but from a zoning perspective, it's not a required stall. So that's where it gets a little bit more problematic in trying to approve something that is intended to park a car in that when the ordinance doesn't allow it. There is the potential for a special exception to authorize that parking. However, that's only if there isn't other parking provided on the site and a garage or yard isn't accessible. Obviously, this yard's not going to be accessible, but I believe they'll have a garage for the home. And the ADU ordinance allows the street to be used for parking. And so that's where the rub would be, is that the specific requirements for ADU allow the street.
So if it's just a pad with a curb cut, can we do that?
So the challenge we had was when I proposed that, transportation said that if it's not an actual legal designated stall, we cannot have a curb cut and we cannot have anything that could make it a pad.
And
because we were designating the actual parking space on the street.
Right. And for transportation also, I mean, based on their comments, reading them closely, they're of the opinion that they prefer it on Harrison. And they
said they
understand.
prefer it on site, actually. They prefer it on site, but they said the dimensions don't work as proposed. So that,
Well,
and that's
right.
Harrison file.
Right. So they're for the street.
Yeah, so they said they would like it on site, but they don't have an issue with it being in Harrison because the dimensions don't work for this piece of property.
Exactly.
So I feel like this is really frustrating because transportation and zoning are just not jiving with what, they're canceling each other out with reference to what each other needs. And I know it's not anybody's fault, but I think that this is one of those instances where they're not in sync with each other at all. And how can we overcome that in our role as a planning commission, but also within this petition? I don't know that we can do that tonight, but this is frustrating because these rules that aren't connecting seem superfluous, and they don't seem to really make why you can't have a curb cut with a legal spot, and this can't be a legal spot because it's a corner lot is just, but it's not a front yard, it's a rear yard. So I don't know how we can overcome that. And I would like to hear some thoughts on that from Nick and Michaela.
Well, I think the way that the code was adopted and the, when you consider that, you have to the city council, when they were adopting the rules, knew what they were doing and purposefully adopted those. And so by not wanting that space in the corner side yard to be legally located parking, there was a reason for that. And the council at the time decided that they didn't want to allow that. And so we have to honor that. We have to apply that. The transportation basically can't authorize something within the right of way, like a curb cut, a driveway approach, to something that is otherwise not allowed by the zoning ordinance. And
Right.
That's what they're saying. And so I don't know that there's necessarily, it may not be you can argue the merits of what the ordinance says, but I don't think that there's a disconnect between planning and transportation or zoning and transportation. I think we're on the same page that we can't approve something that leads to, or that promotes something that zoning doesn't allow.
And zoning does allow the parking on the street.
Okay, so it sounds like what I'm hearing is that there's not anything that the planning commission can do to resolve this off-street parking situation. And am I under the understanding that essentially the current curb cut will be filled in and a curb provided there, and therefore there actually might be a little bit more space to park along the street than there is now? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So is there any other comments on this application about the walls or the height of the walls? Can I entertain a motion? No?
I'll make a motion.
Was that you, Maureen?
Yes, it's really me.
Okay.
All right. Based on the information listed in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move the commission approve the request for the conditional use for an accessory dwelling unit at 1362 South, 13th East as presented in TLN PCM 2020-00358 with the conditions listed in the staff report. Where's the motion for the special exception?
It's on the next page.
Ah, okay. And further move that.
Should we vote on this by itself? Let's vote on this one first.
For the ADU, okay.
For the ADU. Before we add the other one. Okay. Do I have a second for that?
Second.
Was that Crystal?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. It's been moved and seconded that, and so I'm going to call it for a vote. Amy?
Yeah.
Maureen? We're just voting on the ADU right now.
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Andres?
I'll vote yay.
Carolyn?
Agree.
Crystal?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Matt?
Yes.
Can we move to the second motion on this motion sheet, please? Would anybody be willing to make a motion?
I'll do it. Make sure I've got the right one. Okay. Based on the information listed in the staff report, the information presented, and the input received during the public hearing, I move the commission approve the special exception request for grading and retaining walls exceeding 4 feet in height at 1362 South, 13th East, as presented in petition PLN PCM 2020-00455 with the conditions listed in the staff.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Maureen and a second by Carolyn. Is there any discussion of this part of the motion? If not, I will call the roll again. Amy?
Yes.
Maureen?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Andres?
I will have to vote yay.
Carolyn?
Agree.
Crystal?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And Matt?
Yes.
Thank you all. The motion passes unanimously. Okay, we have reached the end of our agenda, and seeing nothing further, I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.